So brilliant. So Robert, again, thank you very much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We always start off by sort of really getting to know you first around your career, because obviously the financial planner life, my background's recruitment, and there's lots of people that listen to the podcast that love to hear about how people got into the profession and their journey whilst they've been in financial planning, because there isn't just one route in, and there isn't, once you're in, there isn't just one route. There's lots of different ways. People go self-employed, employed, go directly authorized, they become ARs or registered individuals, or there's so many routes. And with the dawn of things like administration, power planning, compliance, there's more options within financial planning. So it's always good to get somebody as well that has, I think, experience of working in the financial profession pre-RDR to where we are now, because you've got a really good view of the profession, of where it's going, where it is, the improvements that have been made as well. So, Robert, can you just kick us off by sort of just explaining to us how you got into the profession and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so interesting. When I was a student, and I suppose from sixth form onwards, I used to work in the hotel business and trying to earn money as a waiter. I then found myself going through that. I enjoyed the people and the show of being in the hotel business. So I actually went to college and ended up being in hotel management. So I worked in the hotel business for a few years. Actually worked at Champions, who was owned by Guinness at the time. They did these OPQ tests, which are personality tests, and then said to me, "You need to be in sales. We want you to come and work at Guinness." And so one of the directors, the secretary, had told her husband, who worked for Allied Dunbar at the time, "Oh, Robert's going to go and work in sales at Guinness." So he said, "I'd like to speak to Robert." I went to speak to him, and I never said no. So I left working in the hotel business and went to work at Allied Dunbar. And in those days, you went on a 2-week course, then went out, and you had to then find your business. And just remember, I never said no, and I suddenly found myself in the business after 2 weeks. And I couldn't say to clients, I couldn't say to friends and family, "I'm now a financial planner." I had no idea what it was anyway, because I was a hotel manager. So I started from cold. I literally started selling, cold calling, and went out there. And I can remember one time sitting in the car in a lay-by in tears, but my wife had given me a cassette sort of saying, with the song "Don't Give Up." And so I was sitting, I had plugged it in, and I'm going, okay. And then eventually I did find a niche, and I was helped actually by someone at Dunbar who took me under his wing. At that point, I analysed what I wanted to do, and I thought, I'm going to stick with this. I don't give up. But I want to be independent rather than working for Dunbar, which is really interesting when I go around the full cycle. So I went to work for an IFA practice in Hertfordshire. They were quite a big one at the time. Worked with them for 2 years, met Richard, who's my current business partner, in 1990. And then in 92, it was a typical one where and of course we started the recession there and things. They basically exploded and said, Christmas Eve, 1992, we're finished. Just like that. And so Rich and I said, we'll just do Christmas, then we'll come back. So in 93, Stringer Mann was formed, and we were an IFA for 19 years. And then in 2009, RDR came in, and then we had the RMAR reports. We were directly authorized. I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I'm petrified. So I looked at different networks, and already then I was beginning to get a feel for networks and thinking, I'm not sure who's going to be here for the future. So we interviewed with St James's Place, who, as we know, they've been in touch with us a few times, and interviewed with them. And it was in 2009, so just after 2008 recession. So we've been through. I did the 87 one, 90s, 2008, and I got there and I thought, I need this cuddle. I need this cuddle of a firm. I need someone. I need to feel I've got people around me. I need to feel that. And the change was incredibly difficult. Of course, any change causes the most humongous anxiety. And we joined St James's Place, and I am very proud to be at St James's Place. I obviously you read things in the Times, of course, and people that may or may not know people, but when you work within St James's Place, what you read and things and what you hear is not what we feel within St James's Place. Sure, our charges are where they are, and that's fine. That's a different discussion for today, but I'm very proud of it. Our technical team are incredible, and most of the people that I meet at St James's Place, I would let them advise my mother. So, and that's an important thing. So we've been here since 2009, and through all the the changes, and I'm very comfortable to be here. So I started off with no qualifications whatsoever, and then through the time have to do chartered, etc. That's quite difficult when you're trying to run a business. We're here, we're encouraged, and to actually do that and have people around you who encourage you to do the chartered exams. So, and then to continue. So I'm doing this thing called AF6, just as a, senior management supervision, just for fun. It's not my passion. But there you go. So, cool. I've seen a lot of changes in the industry, and lots of things that don't fit my personality. My clients fit my personality, meeting with people, talking to people, planning, understanding them, taking them forward, achieving their goals, which I have done with some clients. Now we're, it's second generation, even down to third generation with GISES. And that's my passion. There's a lot about this industry that not, exams, CPD, compliance, report writing. I have to make myself do it.
Yeah. Were you always self-employed?
Yes. So the minute I left the hotel industry, I was self-employed. And so, which was part of that panic. I can remember thinking, I need PHI, because if something, I had young children, if something happens to me, so I sold myself PHI and some life insurance, that kept me going for a month. And in terms of the commission. So yeah, I took that step, and it was excruciating. But I've done it, so it's been 30 or more than that now.
So you've always been self-employed.
Yeah.
Self-employed and always. And it's interesting actually, because you get a few people nowadays. A lot of people want to go obviously into the employed route, but sometimes you get someone who just wants to go straight into self-employed. I mean, I had a guy called Taylor Beavis, a young lad who was on my podcast, who came from a sales background selling into financial planning firms. And he was just adamant that he wanted to set up his own directly authorized firm, even directly authorized, not go in AR. And he went under self-employed straight away underneath a network, got his competent advisor status that way, and then straight in and set up his own directly authorized firm, and I just thought that's really ballsy. But you'll see, what I'm seeing is, I think there was a huge amount of people that were self-employed back when you started. That was kind of how you got in. It was literally door knocking, cold calling, wasn't it? It was hardcore, proper sales. But now, and then it sort of branched off into employed when the banks were taking people on. And then obviously the RDR happened. There wasn't as many smaller independent firms, as I would call, like directly authorized firms or AR practices that were hiring employed people. Everyone lost their jobs within the bank on the employed model. And it was self-employed for ages, and then it's gone back to employed. But now I'm seeing like the next gen come through, who are really they're really up for it. They're really up for being self-employed and setting up their own businesses and investing in their personal brands and getting themselves out there on social media. They can see the benefit of doing it. They're a far more entrepreneurial bunch, and people are coming through and doing that.
Yeah, and I think if you join the industry now and you do the qualifications. I have to do the back end. So while I'm working, because you didn't have to do them, so they didn't exist. Whereas now everyone has to do that. The whole thing has become more professional, and therefore, where you've got people, where you automatically do cash flow forecasting, where you are a proper planner, it's becoming a really interesting, decent profession to join. Where instead of saying I want to become a lawyer and accountant, to become a financial planner now, is as good as. It's no longer being, the worst thing in the world. Whereas if you said I'm a financial planner when you went for dinner with people, they would run a mile. It's like being an estate agent.
Yeah, or a recruitment consultant.
Or a recruitment consultant.
But it was, it's similar, isn't it? People like, as soon as they hear it, like, oh shit, I want to talk to him.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell me.
Go, what do you do? And then you find they talk about themselves and they never ask you again.
I'm a careers counsellor these days, Robert.
But it is an industry now that I think we can be proud of because of the qualifications. So it did need to change. It was painful for those of us that have been around a long time. And, you know, say Richard and I had the conversation. We're now those people that we looked at and thought, oh, crikey, you know, you old so-and-sos, you know, you need to get real and not, you know, we're at that age now. But I think if we try and keep young and we try and keep motivated and try and do stuff, but I think it is an industry, it's an exciting industry. I think it has changed.
Well, let's talk about that then, because, you know, pre-recording this, we just, you know, we touched on what the point of financial planning is. So why don't you sort of give us an overview of what you think the point of financial planning actually is?
Okay. People, well, everyone thinks that they know what it is. And they say, why would I need anyone? Because of course you go and buy it yourself. You can do execution only, you can run your own SIP, you can buy your own ISA, you can buy your own pension, which is fine, so you buy a product. But it's a matter of understanding when you're planning. So, and we get this with clients of any demographic. So, you know, people that you think would definitely know about money because they're in it and they're running a hedge fund, for example. But that's not what they do in terms of planning. And and then you get a first-time buyer who's never looked at anything before, hasn't done, you know, and they need to be taken from that angle, from that sort of starting, looking at the very basics. So we all need guiding in life, and so you go to people who have experience and knowledge to be guided, not now to be sold to, but to be able to then say, what do you want to have happen? What are your plans? Where do you want to be? And without that discussion, they don't know often. And you'll sit with people of any age, any demographic, and go through those conversations. They go, well, I haven't thought of it like that. Oh yeah, I need to think about that. Or just listening to their life and then putting things in place. So, and I don't want to sound trite really, but sometimes we are a little bit like life coaches, because if you're thinking of retiring and you've been this all your life, what happens on the day one of retirement? Have you thought about what you're going to do as a person? I had that exact conversation with a client. What will I be as a person? You know, we've worked out that their finances are absolutely fine. The pension's all perfectly in place. They've got everything they need. But what happens when the next day when they finish work? So we talk about transitions, we talk about looking for things to do, but that happens at every stage. So, you know, when you're first buying a house with your partner, and, you know, what happens then, the stresses of running the family, then you start, are you going to have a family? Then the next bit, or if you're running a business. So it's about guiding people. It's about listening to their lives now, and then to say, what is it going to be over various periods of time? We usually look at rolling 5 years, and to then guide them through things that may happen. So the old principle was, what happens if you die? What happens if you don't? What happens if you're ill? So life insurance, PHI, pensions. But it's the same thing. But it's looking and listening to people, understanding, and then helping them with that. And then they like to come and talk to you, check in, whatever their timescale is, yearly, half yearly, some, but to see if they're on track. And then it changes. Then you get an IHT. You know, someone saying to me yesterday, I really think we start looking at IHT and having a plan for it over the next 5, 10, 15 years, which is a completely different conversation to starting off with a first-time buyer, who just needs to know that it's possible for them to buy a house, and what do they need to do, and that they've got us here.
But at the same time, you know, what's interesting what you just said there, what I picked up on, you know, the old tactic being almost classic sales, which is fear of loss of your life, loss of your earnings, loss of your house, loss of a family member. What would you do if you didn't have an income? So the idea was to scare someone silly to buy a product to then protect them. And what they were buying essentially wasn't a product, it was a peace of mind, wasn't it? You know, you're going to get peace of mind if something happens in your life, then you're protected. And that's the whole kind of security instinct. And we all need that. We all do need that feeling of security, because there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning and panicking about something that actually you could control by putting something into place, but you don't do it because perhaps you don't understand it. perhaps you don't understand fully the need for it, and you go off and you search on the internet and there's a million and one articles about it, and then you get lost in the bullshit, and then you don't do it, and therefore you just perpetuate. The next day you get fearful again and fearful again. And I like the explanation that you gave there, that it's almost kind of the financial planning has gone from selling a product, it's gone more into this kind of goal setting. So goal setting for clients that are at varying stages in their life, and different life events will have different needs and requirements financially, and again, from a security perspective. So bringing that goal setting in, and then lining that also up with inspiring that individual to make some changes perhaps in their life, to prepare them for events that might well happen that could trip them up and really take them out of the game. Because one thing's for sure is that things change in your life. There's lots of change that happens. You can't control the change, can you? You know, and you can prepare, but you can't control the change.
No, the one constant in life is change, and so we always have to. That's what makes people anxious. And then it's a matter of looking at what's truth and what's a thought, and then what can you do about those things. You know, change the things that you can, and know that the things that you can't change, you have to sit with, and then try and work around them. I think if as a financial planner you take a step back, and so then we have to, we mustn't ever lose the importance of selling life insurance and PHI and critical illness. If we all sit back and say, oh, we're financial planners, we do cash flow forecasting, we deal with IHT, and you haven't done that bit, it's really important that we don't forget the basis of what we're here for, is all of those elements. But if you stand back and talk to clients through that whole thing, it's a natural thing without having to be, what if, you know, God forbid, what if, you know, and the hearse was here, blah, 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 which is the old way of doing it. But by standing back and being a financial planner and understanding their fears and understanding their goals and wishes in that true empathetic way, 2 ears, 1 mouth job, then it's a natural progress. It's a natural process. And if you have agendas and then you talk about them again, because, you know, in my experience, you know, the worst thing is you get a call and someone says, what have I got? And your stomach goes, oh my goodness, did I do the life insurance, the PHI, the critical illness? Because they will call you and ask you, and so will the people in the family. So we never forget the importance of that, but step back and do it as part of the overall planning process.
And that's it, isn't it? You know, the first thing from my assumption, just from doing FBC1 and the small exposure that I had to working within the financial advice side, was it's all about making sure that you're protected. So in the very, very beginning, okay, so what protection have you got in place? So if something happens in your life, is your family protected? Are you protected? And let's look at that first. That's really, really important. And then it's, okay, well, let's look at when you're thinking about retiring. What are you doing about saving towards your retirement? Because inevitably you're going to have to retire at some stage. So what money are you putting aside to do that? And then it was always, what I remember was always then whatever money was left over was then something that you could then use to invest.
Yeah.
Is there money to invest? So that kind of process makes total sense, because I think also as well, you're aiming then directly at the thing that causes the most fear, which is death, getting ill. And what would I do if I didn't have any money? You know, these are the things that keep us up at night. You know? And I think establishing that initial kind of uncomfortableness and getting it out of somebody, I can imagine from there as a baseline becomes a very powerful conversation, because hopefully you might be getting some truths out of the person. That's the bit about financial planning that, you know, I'm not going to lie, since talking more and more and more to financial planners, I see financial planning perfectly positioned as this wellness proposition. You know, it really does lend itself to, as you mentioned about the goal setting, because, you know, being a business owner myself, you're like that, aren't you? You're up and down all the time. You're thinking, God, have I got enough money coming in? You know, I started during the recession. COVID came along. You know, I was great guns, and all of a sudden COVID came along. I'm shitting myself, you know. And I engaged with a financial planner during that period, and he really helped me put things into perspective. You know, did I have enough money? Was I buying a house? I wanted to buy a house and I couldn't because of COVID happened. It all dropped out. So my arse dropped out. And I was just like, I felt like a complete and utter failure. I felt like a failure. And I started comparing myself to everybody around me, people in my office that had bought a house, but I still couldn't, you know, and he put everything into perspective for me, looked at my savings, looked at my outgoings, looked at my spending habits. And he said, Sam, you're in a great position. You know, you may not have all of this house and all that kind of stuff and all these things that you think you should have, but you've got more money in the bank than the majority of people that I speak to. And when he kind of said that to me, and I felt quite calm about it, and I was able to let go of this belief, this idea that I should have all these things because these are the things that made me a success. When he was like, just take a chill pill and relax and keep doing what you're doing. And it was so calming for me, even that simple bit of advice that he gave me. And that's when I thought to myself, wow, this is actually a kind of that's a job that can help somebody really get out of the shit in their head. And
that's the thing. So there's two things there. One, you're holding that all in, and you're probably not sharing it with the people in your life because you're trying to say, I can do this, I'm in control, I'm a man, I've got everything under control, I don't want to worry anyone in my life because I that's not what I do. They need to feel everything's okay, but it's all in here. And then so going and talking to your guy, girl, whoever your financial planner is, you've offloaded it, you've talked through your concerns, and they've actually then reassured you that actual fact, this goal of buying a house may not be available to you at this moment, but everything else is in place and you're perfectly safe. And you've had that conversation, you've had an opportunity for someone to sit with you and to be compassionate and empathetic towards your situation, but actually reassure you that you're okay. And that's what we need. We need that reassurance that everything's okay. And often as a financial planner, you're spending an hour and a half with someone one-to-one. It's a bit like barbers. You know, people are training barbers to listen to people because you're often one-to-one with them, taxi drivers one-to-one, picking up on people who may not be feeling too good. But as a financial planner, you're listening to people's, in-depth conversations about themselves, although it could be about finance, it's often about themselves for a good long time. And that's the important thing. You had a connection with your planner and they've reassured you everything's okay. And then you can go, okay, that's fine. I can work through that. I can plan for what I need to do. And you're now feeling comfortable. And that's that sharing thing. And equally, it would be difficult, but you could say to someone in the office, actually, I'm feeling really shit about this today. And you could share and everyone would say, oh, that's okay. Because we all learn from being reassured by people and sharing our concerns. Because the more you bottle up, the more stack. And then what happens is people then overflow. So you're okay if you're stacking at a certain point, but then you're adding to it and you've got COVID and you've got business and everything else and you want to buy a house and then it becomes too much. And that's what we with Hector's house, we're always trying to prevent people getting into crisis by helping them at this lower level where we're living normal human beings who are having stresses and just being human is difficult. And there's nothing wrong with that, but being able to offload those stresses. And that's the same thing we do with the clients in listening to them and guiding them, but it's just being human. And at the end of the day, we all need to be more human with everybody and not have all these sort of macho things around us, not have this tough skin around us, because we're not. We're all vulnerable. We're all worried because we're negatively what we're wired to be a negative bias.
Yep.
Because in the old days, that's the thing. You had to keep people around you. You had to be in your tribe. You had to have your connection. And you had to be successful or you're out of the tribe. And then you're disconnected, and so that's the thing. We all need that connection,
and we all kind of build up this idea that we should know everything. And I think as we live in this cyber age where you can literally educate yourself around anything, and we all become these kind of surface level experts on things, so we think we know what we're talking about. And then there's all these people on social media, they're showing off what they're doing, how they got there, and why they're so clever. And you sit there sometimes and you feel a bit dumb. And then all of a sudden that feeling of like shame kicks in. So then you can't actually express how you feel. And it might be something as simple as, how does a pension work? Or, how do I buy a house? Or can I afford it? What are the major things that I come up against? And you advise corporate clients as well as personal clients, and the two kind of marry together a lot of the time, especially for smaller businesses, business owners, is that feeling of that I own a business, I employ people, therefore I should know about finance. And it was only during lockdown when I realized that we weren't in control of our finances as a business. So I didn't know where we were going, what our projections were, what our goals were, or anything like that. And I just gave in. I gave in and I just handed it over to a finance director, and I employed a finance director. And now I just feel so much better. I phoned this guy up and I told him exactly what I was going through, how stressed I was, what I was feeling, how it was affecting me mentally, my relationship with my business partner. I had some other directors within my business who were looking at me and sort of asking me all these questions, and I felt guilty and ashamed. And as soon as I got this finance director in and we looked at it, and he is the expert around that, and he started putting some forecasts together, and and every month I get a lovely report and I can look at exactly how much money's coming in, and we're getting it in quicker, and where we can use it to spend on hiring people. I mean, like, I've never felt more content around it than, and that was because I let go of the need for control, handed it over to somebody else who was an expert, who was also really understanding and listened to my fears, my worries, and my concerns. Because for him, that's his business. His business is to make me happy, because that's his job, to run the finances, not me. Yeah. So it freed me up to be able to focus on the things that I could do without in the back of my mind worrying that something's going to go wrong or it's all going to collapse around me. So every time I have that finance meeting each month, I know exactly how much money we got in the bank. I know how much money things are costing. I know how much we could put aside to hire somebody, what we can pay in bonuses. If I'm working towards a bonus myself, how much I can earn, because that's important to me. That then ties in with my personal goals of buying houses or whatever it is I want to do on the personal side. And it's just been a huge breath of fresh air. And I think sharing is one of the key things here, isn't it? We build it all up. We don't want to kind of express it. And especially as men, I think we're kind of quite terrible at that sort of thing. But once it's out and you do it and you share it with somebody that you can trust, that is a professional. And I think the qualification side of financial planning is, again, being seen not as I'm going to sell you a product, but actually I'm going to help you with your financial well-being. And that's going to free you up to have a much happier and healthier life. You can enjoy your life, not freak out about becoming retired. You can set milestones and goals and what you want to achieve to get there. I think it frees the individual up, doesn't it? It makes them go, okay, right, well, I feel like I'm controlling some of it. That it's not completely unmanageable, that actually it's not as bad as I thought it was. And it's lovely. It's a great place to be. And I think that's again that financial planning aspect. And I think when people listening who are thinking about becoming a financial advisor, think less of what you're selling, the product you're selling and what you're doing and how much money you're going to earn, more about, Jesus Christ, I'm helping people be happy in their lives and lead more fulfilling lives.
Yeah, so step back from that whole thing. The trouble is like, when money is important and when you need to be earning the money, so therefore you need to be providing solutions or charging fee time, because whatever you're doing, you need to have the client. Then it's difficult to know that if you just be that guide, the rest of it will happen. So in your case, you went down. So shame and guilt is a really hard thing for all of us, and you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, which is amazing. Such a big growth mindset that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. So you recognize, you went to someone and you then use their skills to then allow you to be able to maximize your skills, which is being who you are, being Sam, personable, going out there, talking to people. That's what you do. You're not a finance director. That's not your skill set. So pass that off. Recognize who we are, what we do, what we're good at, and give the rest of it to someone else who it's their skill set. If you're an auditor, if you're an accountant, that's quite different, and that's a different skill set. And then try and understand your skills, and then and work through that. So, and as a financial planner, that's what you will be surprised. One will be surprised by the clients that come in looking for that guide, when you think, well, you should know this. The problem with Googling and us all being experts and thinking we're experts and everything is it's disconnecting, because you go on and you learn a little bit about something and you do it online, you do it through your phone, you're disconnected. You need to be talking to someone else about it. You need to be using all of the other people around us. We were a community at one time. You'd go and speak to your aunt about this, your friend down there, the doctor there. We lived in small communities. Now we're sitting in our bedrooms, completely isolated, having delivery from Amazon, looking things up, thinking we know stuff, and we're disconnected. When we should be actually talking to people and sharing and getting out there. That's the problem with now. We live in the most disconnected world, and we need connections.
100%.
Everything, the fundamental way of keeping well and working well is connections. That's how business survives. That's how we survive as individuals, is by being connected. The minute you're isolated, you're in trouble.
Exactly that. And that's some of the things I've learned over the last couple of years. I've allowed myself to come out of my head and move into smaller little communities of people around specific subject matters, whether it be sport or running or hiking, or my mental health. I'm part of small little kind of pockets of communities that specialize within those certain areas that I want to grow into. And you're absolutely right. When you find that tribe of people and you connect with them, you just grow like perfectly, especially through connection and sharing the ups and the downs and what you're going through. And I think, you know, we often, and I think finance is a part of that. You have to, finance is 100% a part of that, because when none of us are, unless you like you're deep into it, none of us are financial experts, but we like to think we are. Like the amount of people like over lockdown that just started chucking all their money into cryptocurrency because some guy on Twitter talks about it, and then all of a sudden I've met loads of financial experts that are cryptocurrency dealers, and you think to yourself, you haven't really got a clue. You've made a bit of money during a period where it's gone up. But yet they think they're like experts in finance and telling everybody what they should do. It's like, I don't think you are.
Does anyone really understand it anyway? That whole thing. And you're all experts, and you love it when it goes up. The thing is, these things can go down as well. And that's the thing, is that when you need the financial planner is when things are bad.
Yeah.
You don't need a financial. When it's good, that's fine. Everyone can go, oh yeah, do that. Our job was through March 2020 was to sit with clients and to reassure them that this is one of those things, like 87 crash, like 1990s, like 2008, all of the things that, the likelihood is over the long term, this will just be a blip on the graph. But people will then panic and they want to go to cash. And that's the wrong thing. And even stats at the moment show that you shouldn't have gone to cash, because that would have been the wrong thing to do. And I'm not, if someone's really, that's their attitude to risk, that's what they want, then fine, then we would. But we have to have then sat with them and understood their fears, going through all of those things, to then say, look, this is our experience. And if you trust us, this is what the right thing to do. And that's life, because we're all, we would always reject the unfamiliar. We want to keep away from pain. We want to keep away from hurt. And that's what our brain does. That's what we need. That's how we had to survive. Was it a saber-toothed tiger? Run, go. Don't wait. So that's the thing in finance. The behavioral finance is people will do the wrong thing because they're driven by fear. We're all driven by fear. So we want to get away from the pain, and that's life, because we're these little humans trying to cope, and we've got these different brains, haven't we? We've got sort of our computer, our human brain. This is listening to
paradox,
isn't it? Dr. Stevens the other day about the chimp brain, and then the computer brain and the human brain. The chimp paradox, wonderful idea, and that you then recognize this part of the brain, and then you then work out what is the truth. What's the thought? What's the truth? That's the fundamental thing when people are anxious. What is real? What is real here? Let's focus on that. And that is in everything we do.
I love the chimp paradox, actually. It was really good. Absolutely loved it. And I think one thing you just picked up on there, which is jump on, is that a thought is a thought, isn't it? And it doesn't mean just because you're feeling it, you're thinking it and feeling it, that it's true. And I've gotten quite into CBT recently, and looking at the cognitive distortions that our brain that we present ourselves. And there's like these 10 cognitive distortions, and you can go through them as like all or nothing thinking, over generalization, mental filtering, disqualifying the positive, mind reading, and fortune telling, which I used to be stuck in all the time. Like catastrophizing something,
big one,
or magnification, whether it's like it's happened once and it's going to be, it's definitely going to happen again, And then catastrophizing being the other way around, it happens, and oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world. It's going to be terrible. Emotional reasoning, we should on ourselves all the time. I should be earning more money. I should have that house. I should be earning, my business should be so much bigger than it actually is. I should be slimmer than I am, and all that sort of stuff. And we should on ourselves all the time. And you look at the language that we use and these cognitive distortions. And when you actually look at them and you identify them, then you realize it's like, wow, I'm just bullshitting myself constantly. I'm just telling myself these things all the time. And it's no wonder I'm starting to believe my own sort of cognitive distortions, these distorted views of what life should be or why it should be.
So you're not bullshitting yourself, you're treating yourself like shit. So that's the thing. So you're not. So bullshitting would be if you were just lying to yourself, but you're treating yourself. It's even worse. You're treating yourself like shit. So thoughts become feelings, feelings become behaviors or actions. That's saying, various people have said that, and that's the truth. And that, we have to then be able to, use a different part of our brain to say, actually, okay, what is true here? Where am I catastrophizing? Take a breath, and then, but also just change that internal dialogue. I'm a big fan of Brené Brown and Marissa Peer. She's a bit off the wall, but the I am enough stuff, because there's no point saying I actually have a six-pack. I'd like to work towards it, but I am enough. Actually, then you're not actually giving yourself too much to cope with, because it's the truth. I am enough. Now, I could earn more, and what if I want to? Then what steps do I put in place? But just knowing that I am okay. I'm okay as I am. Actual fact, I have everything I need, but if I want to have more, what do I need to do logically to put those steps, and then put a plan into place? And then, your thoughts become your feelings, become your behaviors. So, I'm going to fail at this. So then you don't do the work. So I'm going to fail at that. And then you get shame and guilt. And the things, you've always got to go back to saying, what is the truth here when you're feeling anxious? And the way to do that is you have to ground yourself, and you have to breathe, and then go, okay, Robert, stop those thoughts. That's crap. You're going to be okay. This is fine. And then move forward from there. And if you need to, then try and get some help. So, every day we have it, don't we? I've got to reconcile some bank statements. I've got to reconcile some stuff. I've got to do 2 exams. I've got, stuff, and then stuff going on. And then you have to go, right, okay, what can I control? When am I going to plan to do this? What time can I put in my diary to do it? But don't just wake up and worry about what you haven't done tomorrow yet. And it hasn't happened. The only thing you have is this now, this breath we have now. So therefore, be in this moment. You have to realize that, and then not worry too much. You have to just take a step back. It's really hard to do that. Get out in nature. The things that you've done recently, so fantastic to be out there in nature, getting some fresh air, seeing some stuff, widening up your mind, and then talking with your mates as you're walking and talking. And you may not be talking so deeply, but you might be talking about things that are, that are your worries. And that's what we need in that connection. Seeing that photograph of all of you up there. I mean, I love Snowdon, and I love that particular, I've been there, and I get that feeling just looking at the photograph, but that connection of you guys, and that's wonderful, because you'd have walked and talked and maybe talked some stuff out, but had some good times and made some memories and all that. But that's so important, fundamental to human nature.
Yeah, and I was hugely grateful for that whole weekend, and that was exactly what happened. We did 3 peaks. I went away with 4 guys, and to look at macho type individuals, great bodies, and all about fitness in it, but actually so mentally aware of their feelings and their emotions, and we connected on so many levels, and we were all different backgrounds, so we shared our views and our feelings and all of that kind of stuff, and we all walked away. And I mean, like, we just walked away and we felt so replenished, like our cup was full. Gratitude for me is a hugely important thing, and I think it's an underprescribed medication, gratitude, and it's free. And
social prescribing.
Yeah, it's like, and I was chatting to a lad a couple of days ago. He's going through some really difficulties at the moment, and I just explained to him how gratitude for me and the things that you get to do and what you actually have, not what you don't have. Focus on the things that you actually have, and then wake up in the morning and open your eyes and go into gratitude. And the first thing I do every single morning, as soon as I open my eyes, it's almost automatic now. Well, it is automatic. I'm going through like 15 minutes of deep gratitude, and I genuinely feel my cup fill up inside me. So as I get out of bed, I'm in a great state of mind. There isn't much that's going to take me out because my gratitude's up there. You know, the difficulties come throughout the day, but I'm very grateful for where I am, and anything that comes to me is a goddamn bonus. And it you know, it's one of the hardest things that you can do in the beginning, but just doing it just works, and the brain will change. Because we said it earlier about, like, if you think negatively, right? If you tell yourself all the time, you're not good enough or whatever, right? You haven't got this, you haven't got that. Why are you not there yet? Then you're going to believe it. So why can't you just change it on its head and be positive, have a positive mindset? And people say, oh yeah, but thinking positive, you know, it doesn't really work. It's like everything else, like thinking negative, it bloody works because it proves it. But you've got to work at it every single day to create those synapses, those neurotransmitters, that plasticity in the brain. Your brain has the ability to change all the time. And over the last 2.5 years, I am living proof that you can change your view, you can change your perception of the world. And I'm so eternally grateful, and gratitude has been a huge part of it. It's absolutely free, but you've got to get into an attitude of gratitude.
But the difficulty is you have to practice it. It's a bit like yoga. You know, the reason I call it practice is because it's not easy, and sometimes it's really hard to get there. And you go, but the whole point is, what you're not doing is waking up, picking up your phone, comparing your lives to everyone else on Instagram or everything else, or whatever they're doing, and you're saying, and it's difficult. What can I be grateful for today? But what you're not doing is say, what haven't I done today? Where am I a failure? I haven't been to the gym. I've eaten too much. Whatever you're sitting there going, what is good about my life or good about me? And that is hard because sometimes we're not in the place to do that. But as you do it, what is happening is exactly what you said. You're changing some pathways there. You're actually getting into that practice of being more positive. If you can get up in the morning as well and say to yourself, you are brilliant. You know, you're great. Or you are enough. Just having that, saying it during the day, every time you get a doubt, go, I'm enough. I'm enough. Eventually, it becomes inbuilt in you because you have changed those things. Because we are wired to be negative. We are wired to fear, and so that is where we're wired. And that's why we need to change those wires. That's the thing.
So mental health for you is incredibly important, and I mean, you are the founder also of a charity called Hector's House, and something you've been involved now for nearly 7 years. And that's, well, you tell us a little bit about Hector's House and actually how that came about.
Yeah. So in 2011, Hector, our son, who's 18, took his life, and it's difficult to unpick now because we've got hindsight, and also we've looked at stuff. We're in mental health, looking at signs. So because to us it came out of the blue. You know, he took his life, and we didn't understand or know that he was going to, or that there were any problems. We now looking at various things and checking, we can then say, well, he did have stacking. He did have things that happened to him over a period of time. Particularly with young men, there's, with it can be breakup of relationships. He broke his leg, he failed his driving test. His other students were going off to one uni, he was going to go to a different place. And so there's all these things which we call stacking, which then got him to the point when people get to that point of crisis where they actually take their lives. Professor Roy O'Connor talks about a perfect storm. It is, everything is in that place when it's a perfect storm, it seems to be the logical answer to them. Unless you're there at that moment to intervene, it's really difficult, because to them it's a logical answer. Everyone's going to be better off without me. There's no reason for me to be here, and it's a logical answer. So he took his life, and so we overnight, well, in the morning, went from being a normal family to then suddenly bang, everything stripped naked, everything completely, everything I ever thought I knew, thought I was, in terms of, you know, running a business, knowing what to do, was gone. And so you literally have to start from scratch. Everything, and we then did some counselling, and the problem is you have to then start unwrapping all of the things that you already had in your box to start with. So, and if you ever do have counselling, if one ever has counselling, then, you know, the stuff from years ago, you know, and of course, I was, you know, I didn't have anything to complain about as a child, but we all have things that we take with us that we think, okay, you know, and you've got to unwrap everything to then, before you even work on the next bit. So 2 weeks later, I came back to work, and, you know, you sit here, well, when I sat here and thought, you're still numb anyway. At that point, you're still completely numb. And there are these stages of grief, which you go through, and it's not normal. It loops around and it goes on for a while. We will never get over the death of Hector. We manage it, and my wife Linda said, we will not let this define us as a family. It gave us permission then to be able to do things, and not, you know, so that was her decision. Grief, she describes again as this diamond that goes round and round, and you find another facet and another thing and another thing. So what happens, you learn to manage it. You learn to live with it. Things will suddenly happen when you're triggered again. So, and then you have different life stages, and then his friends have different life stages, and you go, oh, crikey, you know, he could have had a child by now, or something. And then, you know, we've got Lottie and JJ, his siblings, to worry about. My business had to come back to here. And with suicide and mental health, this was way back in 2011. So it was then not really talked about as much as now. Now it's getting better. It is, Jeff, definitely getting better. There are amazing charities there. But basically, I had people running away from me in the street, literally. They saw me coming, they dived into boots because they didn't want to speak to me. Or we had people coming and telling all their problems. So I'm sitting there as an ex-normal person saying, I don't know. My daughter's suddenly, my daughter's this, my daughter's that, or my son's this, or my mother's this. So all of a sudden I'm going, I don't know. So after a while, I then produced a fact sheet, which had, it had Calm, which was not heard of in those days. Now it's a massive charity, fantastic, but it was very new. And Jane Powell worked with her right, at the beginning. We raised money for her. Who started it. Papyrus was really new and small. That's now big. So I had Samaritans and things. So I put a fact sheet together to say, as a signposting thing. Then over time it developed, and then Then I put on a website, and then Hector's House worked, and then in 2016 we then actually got charitable status. But we've been raising money for Calm, and doing things and running, and friends and family all wanted to get involved to do that. In the meantime, I was here at work, and I must have been the biggest shit. I mean, Richard had to, because you're going through grief, come in here and you cannot even understand what you're doing. Your brain is gone. But I'm trying to go and see clients. I didn't see clients for a while, for probably a few weeks, but just driving anywhere was difficult to try and get around the roundabout. I remember, I can't remember how to do this. I went to a client's in Watford, got in a lift, went to see them, had a meeting with them, got back into the lift, just burst into tears, because you couldn't deal with all the stuff and the stresses. But over time that goes. 18 months afterwards, I went to see the quack about, I had a heart arrhythmia, and he asked me some questions and said, Robert, you're depressed.
Mm.
I didn't know I was, but I'd lost hope. That's, and I know obviously what we do now. I know that, you know, if you don't have any hope for the future, if you can't think forward, if you're in this moment and you can't think forward, you know, it's too much. That's a sign of loss of hope, a sign of depression. So, and you know, so this lot here had to put up with me, you know, going through that and supporting as best they could, because it's really hard, because you want everyone to come and give you a cuddle, but you want everyone to F off, basically. And that's depression too. So to be able to understand someone who's going through crap is that they want both. They're very selfish people. I wanted cuddles, but I wanted to be left alone, but that wasn't really what I wanted. And so it's hard. So Hector House was born out of all of that, and to then raise education, awareness and support for people to prevent suicide by working at the lower end, to say, you know, basically, how do we live well and how do we keep well? How can we realize when we're not? And also, and to prevent people getting into crisis if we can. Okay,
that's a really deep story. So thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't imagine what it must be like to go through to lose a child. You know, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and I can imagine it's every parent's worst nightmare for that to happen, and going through that must have been incredibly difficult for you, and obviously yourself as well, because not only have you lost a child, but it's affecting everything to do with your life, isn't it? You know, work, for example, was being affected, how people perceived you, what you thought those people perceived of you. You're in a place of just isolation really within your head, probably trying to work out exactly what the hell's gone on, why it happened, carrying these questions constantly in your head. And I can imagine it's something that no one really fully understands, and they can kind of empathize and they can kind of get to that place, to sympathize, I suppose, as opposed to empathize, but get to a place of kind of wanting to understand, but you don't know until you go through it. So thank you for sharing that. That must be really, really, really difficult. But, you know, Hector's House is a charity that you've set up to be able to support and help anybody that's then potentially going through a difficulty like that within their lives, and to help. So is it to help the individuals, like person that's, say, going through a difficult time in their life, like depression or anxiety, to help them recognize the signposts that actually they might be on a path that could be leading to self-harm? And is it also to support parents that have also gone through it, and family members that have gone through that? Have you got two sort of facets to it?
Well, I suppose there's quite a few different things. So we go out and talk to schools and communities and corporates about our stories. So storytelling is important in life, and it's how we do in financial planning. The best thing, the way to connect, is to tell a story. So we go into schools, and one of the things that we have is, because it's real, it's particularly going to schools. So when you're talking to students, and Lottie, my daughter, or I, or it's usually the family go in, because it's real. They go, this is no sort of mental health tick box thing. They're actually going, and we connect with them straight away. The important thing is then we're not trying to cause them with the connection is there, talking about Hector and his story and being vulnerable and authentic about that. But then we want to, the whole point is giving people hope, and to know that it's okay to feel crap, it's okay to feel shit, you are a human being, but what can we do to try to do that? So eating better, moving more, connecting. All the things we've talked about here, being in nature, trying not to eat to drink or eat too much of the wrong things, and then to connect with people when you need to. And that works in schools, that works in corporates, that works in communities, that's everything. So we're going out and talking to people and saying, this is our story, it's okay to talk. And so raising awareness about mental health, which is it's as important as physical health. And the whole narrative out there is that there's more of that going on. The important thing then is that what happens, and it's a bit like everything, it's okay to talk about all that, and it's okay to say, it's great to talk, it's important to talk, you must talk if you're feeling shit. But what happens then if someone says, actually, I am feeling really shit, what do I do? So then we need to be able to signpost places where they can get support. And then when people are in crisis, we will get them support. So sorry about that. So we will then we triage when people come to us. So we have contacts all the time coming in, and we triage. So it may be that actually being able to hear someone and to help them is, we'll often go, thank you so much. I didn't realize we just having you guys there has really helped us. Thank you for signposting us towards this, that, and the other, and saying that we should go and see the GP. We'll come back to you if we need any more. Or part of that would be that person needs to go and see one of our psychiatrists, counsellors, or whatever, and we get them there. And we have gone and picked people up before. We've done various things that we don't really need to discuss now in terms of being there and doing something. So it's providing awareness and education, and then and as much as we can being the supports, but then also actually saying, right, we will pay for this. We will get you to see someone. Because they go to IAPT where you get CBT, there's a 9-month waiting list there. CAMS, there's an 18-month waiting list. If someone says to you, they're really, they've got suicide ideation, they need to speak to someone now. So we do, part of what I do on the crisis line is, we have to ladder up. So basically, if someone has thoughts, it's okay to have thoughts of suicide. You can have thoughts. We can all have those thoughts. The next thing is, do they have a plan? That's when I start getting a bit squeaky. They go, okay, they've got a plan, that worries me. Then means, then time frame. So that's where we have to then say, yeah, it's okay to think, to feel crap, and to actually say that you feel crap. What worries me is the next thing. If someone says, yeah, I have thought about it and I think I know what I'm going to do, then that's where we go, okay, right, we need to intervene. So you can't always be there on the bridge with Johnny Benjamin when that's what actually happened with Johnny Benjamin and story, and then that superhuman being noticed he was there and stopped and spoke to him and saved his life. And that's what happens in crisis intervention, is you learn how to do that, but we do that virtually as well. We do that online. So Hector says it's education, awareness and support, and getting people if they need it. But the main, it's a bit like to our community, saying it's historically a macho thing, the industry. Lots of blokes, and luckily, lovely, lots of other people now, lots of females in it, and it's opening up. It's actually being much more inclusive. But it is a macho. It is. I can't. It's not. I wouldn't be in too much trouble saying it is macho. And there are men around, and lots of men around, all trying to run businesses, all trying to keep it all going, all pretending that they're okay, when they may not be. And it's okay to say, actually, I'm not feeling good about this. I'm feeling a bit crap today. It's all too much. I just need to do what you did, which is recognize that there are things that you need help with. And it can be, luckily, it can be as simple as, actually, can I get someone to do my accounts for me? Can I get someone to do my marketing for me? Or I need to actually express what's happened in my life that's making me feel crap. What baggage have I got? And actually go through that process of unloading something that's happened to you, or something that you're struggling with mentally or physically, that causes us to have shame and stigma and to hide when we shouldn't be. But we need to be able to feel safe and be able to have those conversations in a safe place with someone who can then listen. And you don't have to be experts to do it, but just to be able to listen, and then with you say, what's your next step? What would be good for you? Because there's no point telling people. The whole point is, what we want to do is to be with them and help them understand the next step. We all know what we need. We deny it, we cover it up, we do other things to numb that need, but we all know what we really need to do. And sometimes just by having someone being with you and being, if you can't be empathetic, you can be passionate or sympathetic, to then say, okay, what do you need next? And then take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that connection, doesn't it? that someone doesn't feel so alone and feel so much in their head, and they're internalizing it, and on their own power they're trying to solve their own problems, which actually it can be incredibly difficult, because your mind's getting you to a place where you're self-harming in whatever capacity. It could be down the route of suicidal ideations, it could be addiction, it could be multiple things that you're doing, that can continue to give you that self-harm. And I think until you actually come out and share it with somebody and express exactly how it is you're feeling, you don't actually truly get over it.
No.
But I think at the same time, it's that trust, isn't it? It's that feeling of like, okay, can I tell somebody who's going to be non-judgmental?
That's the trick. The non-judgment, the positive regard.
Yeah, and that's one of the hardest things. And I can relate to that myself through and I haven't, I've kind of touched on this, but I'm going to share it today. But I went through addiction issues, and for years and years and years and years, I was using alcohol on a binge basis to solve my problems, and de-stress. And comes on a Thursday, I convinced, Thursday night I would come on and I'd go out down the pub and I get absolutely hammered. And then Friday night I do the same, and Saturday I do the same. And I swear blind I'd never do it again. And bang, I was doing it again the week after. And that was my routine for a good 15 years. And gradually, I was getting more and more depressed, because more of life problems were building up on me. Of course they are. My unmanageability was happening, but I was presenting as being okay to everybody around me. But on the inside, I was dying. And gradually over time, I was getting closer and closer to what you expressed earlier, that the future just wasn't a future for me. And it was just, I didn't see the point in it. I was getting bitter. I was getting resentful. I was full of fear, full of anxiety. And I was in a place of just like a horrible place. But the type of person I am, I will try to solve my problems. I love reading. I love reading all these different books. And I was reading all these books about mental health, all these books about self-help and everything like that. I was even using other, like cannabis and stuff like that. If I can smoke cannabis, then I don't drink, then that's okay. And even looking at things like psilocybin and all these different types of drugs that I thought, if I used that, then I wouldn't drink, because drinking was the reason why I was depressed. I didn't have any clue or understanding that actually it was my thinking that was the problem, and that was the reason why I was drinking. Drinking was a symptom of my thinking. And one day I just stopped, and I got up after a binge, and my wife was like, you got to change, mate, otherwise I'm gone. And I was thinking, right, I'm going to lose everything here, my wife, my daughter, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, to the point where I was like, well, what's the point? Because I can't stop. I can't keep making these promises and failing and failing and failing. And the shame and the guilt that was building up in me was causing my depression and thoughts of suicide. And a friend of mine got clean and sober through a 12-step program. So I reached out to her and just said, how the hell did you do it? I am literally broken right now. I can't stop, but I've got all these things around me. I don't understand why I can't stop. Anyway, so I went to this 12-step program, and I walked into this group, and there must have been about 70 people in there. And obviously I was just like hanging out my ass. And I got in there and I sat down, and there was these people just started talking normally about their feelings and what they were going through, what level of drinking. And it was all different levels of drinking and drugs and all of that. And instead of like looking at the differences, because I wasn't a park bench alcoholic, I didn't go to prison or hospital or anything like that. Instead of looking at the differences, I looked at the similarities. And instantly, I thought, oh my God, I'm in the right place. And that connection that you mentioned about community, I could feel it coming out of my chest. I was opening up. I was like, oh my God, this is where I belong. Because all these people were saying how I was feeling. And I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
And by doing that, and then I got round to me talking about it, and I expressed how I was. And then it dawned on me that these guys are complete abstinents. So they chose to never drink again and never do drugs again. Never occurred to me that was my solution. So I made a choice that day to never drink or do drugs again, right? And to work on my thinking. I instantly got a sponsor. That sponsor has been like by my side for like 2.5 years. And once I gave up, I actually stopped drinking that day and never had an urge again. I've never had an urge again. It's unbelievable, right? because I let go, I surrendered. I hit this point and I surrendered and I let go. And then I thought to myself, I have to work on my thinking. And then when he expressed to me and he explained to me that it's your thinking that's wrong, and then he started doing all this work with me, which is basically like cognitive behavioral therapy. Once I gone through that and I started let going of all these past resentments, these fears that I had about myself, the future, my self-esteem, looking at my thinking, how I interpret situations and how I get myself into unmanageable situations and overwhelmed, which could potentially lead to drinking. Or for me, actually, it's not the drinking that I worry about, it's the going back to depression and suicidal thoughts. And as soon as I realized that, and I was able to manage, so get rid of all my past, get it all out into the light. So I had to get over all these resentments, all these fears I had to bring it all into the light. I had to look at it. I had to look at my part of it, dissect it all, let it go, let it go, let it go, let all these rocks out of my backpack. And I was just lighter than a feather. And now every day, as we said earlier, it's a practice for me. Every day I have to work on my mental health. I get up, I go into gratitude. If a thought comes into my head, I have to look at it, write it down. What part am I in it? What part is it affecting in me? What cognitive distortion? What character trait is negative? How can I turn that into a positive character trait? And every day that I do that, the stronger I get. And it's incredible. And it's a practice, like a daily routine, daily practice. So I know that things like what you've gone through and what your son, fortunately, happened to your son, I know it's a real thing. I know how hard it is, and things like Hector's house that signpost people, that allow people to feel like it's okay to express that you're not okay, is so powerful, because that connection with two people that fully, truly understand it saves lives. Because I know it and I experience it. And what I love about what you're doing is you're turning a terrible thing that happened in your life, you've turned it into a positive. So for me, an example of that within a 12-step program, right, is that I have to support somebody else. So I've got somebody that I'm sponsoring, and they're going through the stages that I went through, and they're having these revelations and changes, and their life's getting better, their family life, their work, everything's improving. And for me, it's like I'm learning as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. And that, again, is that connection. And I think as human beings, we are losing that connection. We're losing that ability to help each other, community, because that's how we function. And none of that is houses. None of that is flash cars. None of that is how much money I've got or how good looking I am or what my Instagram followers is. It's just pure, deep compassion and care, and honesty and trust and courage and belief that you can get better, and supporting that person even when they're down and when they're up and all of that kind of thing. And I think hats off to you to set up Hector's house and what you're doing, because you're helping people, aren't you? And those people are going to get better because of the signposting that you're doing, that you're allowing people to feel like it's okay, it's normal to have these thoughts, but they're not going to do you any good. So let's look at a solution to get you out of it, so you don't feel like shit and you can enjoy the rest of your life, because everybody has that within them to enjoy the rest of their life and have that wonderful connection and meaning and purpose, and jumping out of bed in the morning and thinking, yeah, I love this, so hats off to you to turn that travesty really into a positive.
Thank you. And also, I mean, for you to share your story is incredible, because you showing your vulnerability allows me to show my vulnerability. So even though we have different vulnerabilities, the fact that you've done that is incredible, and what you've done is amazing. And and the people you met there, whatever their life situation, you had that connection and empathy with them, and that. But at the end of the day, whatever it is we're suffering from, it's all down to being humans, and that we need to realize that we are okay. We are enough. We do our very best. We have to forgive ourselves for anything that we haven't done or anything that we may do, and realize that we do our best. And we always said, if we could save one life, but then we get greedy, and then we now say we want to do more, and that's not enough. But just the fact that you've now looking after someone else, exactly what you said, what you're then learning And then you're learning how to keep yourself safer as well. And that through our work with Hector's house, we talk about Hector every day. So there is, it's sort of a symbiotic relationship, really. But also, I'm learning more every day about myself. I'm also a bit like you. I have to do this reading for finance, but I'm a passionate reader of anything to do with mental health and anybody who's talking about mental health. And so I'm learning about me and I recognize where I need to learn more and try and be a better person every day. But I don't beat myself up and go, yeah, what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm where I am now. It all happened for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I have to accept that I'm here now. Mm-hmm. And what can we do going forward? And so we try to, the whole point is to give hope to people, to say, you can do this. You will get better.
Yeah.
It is possible. We can do this. We can do this together. We will help you find a solution, because it's only too late when it's too late, when someone's taken their life. We can't help them then. That's done. And we then have the tsunami of grief for their friends and family. But up till then, there is always hope, because it's just finding for everybody the right reason as to what they're carrying and where that's come from and how do we sort that out. Because in most cases, unless someone has a severe and enduring mental health issue, many cases, it's about just being human. And that stuff that you've got in your backpack. I love that analogy. And you're throwing each of those stones out, because that's what we need to do as human beings.
No, absolutely. And I love the fact that you said hope there as well, because that's a big part of it. Yeah. You have to have a faith and a belief that things can get better, and that they can and will get better. And I just want to emphasize, I was that guy who was so smashed apart internally, smashed apart. Like, I did not want to be here. Now I am so grateful for my life, so grateful for everything that I have, the people around me, my health. You mentioned it. It's not just about working on one area. You have to work on multiple areas. So what are you eating? What are you doing to your physical body? Are you exercising? One thing by not putting alcohol and drugs into my body is it's massively improved my mental health, but it took time. It took time to fix my thinking, and to undo the damage that I was doing to my body and my mind. But gradually over time, it gets better. And then another thing that I want to kind of emphasize to people, if anybody's listening and they're going through any kind of mental health problem, is that there isn't, for me, and this is my personal opinion, because we've all got different levels of mental health. There's a big, it's a plethora of kind of areas. But from my experience of being depressed and anxious and an addict, is that it's not a quick fix. There isn't a quick fix. It is daily work. You don't go down the gym, lift some weights, and then bam, you're a fitness model. It takes years to get a body like a fitness model, and you have to maintain it. You can't just, I've got it now, so it's there. It's an everyday maintenance, and it's exactly the same with your mental health. Don't think that, okay, well, I've just seen something that says within 90 days I can be happier, or change your habits within 21 days and all of that. Yeah, fundamentally, those types of things are right essentially, but it's a continual progressive journey. And from, day one that I decided to change my life to whatever day I'm on now, which is nearly coming up close to like 1,000 days, it's like I've changed, but every day is different. Every day gets progressively better, and it compounds, doesn't it, over time? Yeah. You've got to chip away at it constantly, chip away at it. There's no end in sight. And that's what I just want to emphasize with people, because I was always looking for the quick fix to get better, always looking for the quick fix to get better.
Yeah.
If I could take a tablet that would make me better, then I'd have done it.
That is crucial. And people do come to us, and they'll say, they want to go to their GP, they want to have a medication, they want to have an answer, they want to have a diagnosis, etc., etc. Now, for some people that may be useful, some people it isn't useful, but it is exactly what you say. In actual fact, offloading can be a great help, but then you've still got the work to do. And it's the same way with everything in our job. We say, well, it's okay, people, they need to have that constant support. because it's a long process to get to that point, and you still have to chip in. So, you know, it's like counselors have to have, they have to have their support, because constantly we all need support going through. So with your program, you had someone mentoring you, you're now mentoring someone else. Now that thing is causing you to have that continual support. You probably have a supervisor as well to say, well, how is your person doing? And because the process, we need people to go, yes, okay, we can support you, but we support people then for, you know, series of times and for months. You then have to learn to, how do you support yourself on an ongoing basis every single day for the rest of your life. And that doesn't need to be big. That's just small tweaks, isn't it? That's like when you're saying, okay, well, I need to get fit. And there comes a point when you can just do a maintenance program as opposed to a rigorous, you know, shredding program. But it is, because that's in the understanding then in the end that life is a balance. So if we can be balanced in everything we do, and to understand and just to check in with ourselves, and then say, yeah, and then so you can keep sort of adjusting. Good analogy, both in financial planning, but also with our mental health and with our physical health. You have to just check in with yourself and just adjust, and just, you know, trim those sails or whatever you need to do to say, am I on the right course?
Yeah.
And then, but you say, because it's not a pill. You cannot, there is not a pill for this ill. There's not a pill for every ill, but, you know, it's about, yeah, doing all of those things. So we use the analogy, eat, move, love, which is, you know, eat well, move more, connect. And if you can do those three, if you can just work on that, you know, again, it's down to, you know, am I drinking Red Bull and having a donut before I go to the office, thinking that my brain is going to be great for sitting here and actually doing some decent work when I'm like that?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, and it's easy for me to say, drink more water, you know, and people go, and I had a sixth form, and I said, you know, eat more kale. Oh, kale can do one. And I get that. Yeah, sure. But just try and just think about a little bit more about what we're doing, because we're chemicals, we're electricity, we need to be balanced.
The one thing I've learned the most of is this being mindful around what I'm doing, who I'm surrounded by. Am I reviewing my day? Am I looking at the part that I play in things? Am I being selfish? Am I being self-centered? Am I connecting with people and being giving and caring and looking out for somebody else? Or is it all about me? Am I spending too much time at work? You know, am I thinking about the staff that are in my business? Am I thinking about their well-being, their mental health? Do I have things in place for them as well? Because it's about them and supporting those guys also.
So important.
So mindfulness for me, it's a practice now on a daily basis. And again, you build it and people think, God, you must be thinking about it all the time. And it's like, no, it just comes naturally to me now. I'm very mindful. I mean, you said there about like a cup of coffee, or a coffee for me, I've got to be very careful with coffee. Because if I'll have my one cup a day, and you saw me have my espresso earlier, I find it, you know, it's nice, it's great, it does things for me. But I tell you what, if I don't have it, I'm like almost in a hangover. And like I went through stages where I don't drink coffee and then I feel great, but then I slump a little bit. And I think, oh, well, why am I slumping? Am I slumping because I'm not in a good place? Or am I slumping because not the caffeine? I get back on the caffeine, I think, oh, caffeine's a solution, you know, and we can kind of get ourselves into like silly things, you know, and it's something as simple as coffee or too much sugar or too much high fat foods and not enough exercise. And ultimately it comes down to some of the fundamental basics of like, what am I putting in my body? What am I consuming in this world, which is surrounded by things that are addictive? You know, am I spending too much time on social media? Am I comparing myself to others too much? Am I addicted to sex? Am I addicted to food? Am I addicted to exercise? And it's like, I think people kind of look at addiction as being this kind of park bench type thing, but actually it is kind of, we're surrounded by overstimulation. It's the dopamine age, you know?
Yeah. And these companies and the thing, you know, they design everything to really solve that feel. So McDonald's is designed to have that feel in your mouth. It is not designed to do you any good, but and everything is out there for these dopamine hits, and then we get addicted to it. So our brain does that, and we get that hook on it. Now the other addictions are because we have a feeling of trauma. We've had trauma or loss, and we're trying to cover up. There's a numbness for that. But a lot of these other things, TikTok is addictive.
Yeah.
It's fun and it's addictive. And as a 59-year-old man, I have to say that make sure I don't go down the hole.
Yeah.
But other things are because we're trying to cover something or we're trying to fill a hole that we're lacking.
Yeah.
But out there, they are so clever in getting us in those things that give us the dopamine hit, that as a human being, what we want is to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel warm, to feel loved, to feel full, which goes back to our primal needs, and which is to eat enough, to have sex, etc. And so that's what everything's designed to do. And so we have to be aware of what is around us. As you said, who am I sitting next to? Who am I with? Am I with people that are uplifting or not? Make a change if that's not a good place to be. Also, what am I exposing myself to? It's so trite. We read all these books and things like, don't keep your phone by the bed. Do not look at your phone as soon as you wake up. Try to do some mindfulness or gratitude before you get out of bed. And everyone will go, oh, that's so woo-woo. But I'm telling you, if you can try and avoid that, do not compare yourself to everyone else's wonderful lives on Instagram, where everyone else has gone on holiday. They have a wonderful life and you're not. Because even as a 59-year-old man, I can look sometimes and think, oh, and I have to go, you're being a dick. Stop looking. Because you wouldn't take that plate of food round to your friends that has just been made. They'd think, if you knocked on your next door neighbour with a plate of food, they'd love, just cook this. They'd go, what are you doing here? And yet we're looking at people sitting in restaurants with those 2 glasses of wine going, and you're thinking, why am I looking at this?
Yeah.
So I actually do have I do a cleanse every now and again. And it sounds woo-woo, and I know, but I actually say, right, I come off and I actually will leave my phone at weekends so I don't look at social media, because it is addictive. It's comparison.
Hugely, and it's designed it's designed by gambling companies. I mean, like Facebook, Instagram, etc. The reason why you can pull down on it is because it's like pulling down on a gambling slot machine arm. It's been designed by gamblers. It's been designed to be addictive, and it's a dopamine creator, and it is dangerous. And I think digital detoxing is so important. I've done it myself. I go through digital detoxes. I go through my phone, delete everything, simplify it, so spend less time on it, because the less time I spend on that, the less time I can spend on something which is worthwhile. But I think as well, it's really, really massively important to not have these high expectations of oneself.
No.
None of us are perfect, and it's a continuation of change when you try and change your life and become more, from a well-being perspective. You don't go from one day being one thing to another day being another. It is a progressive, natural change. You're allowed to fail. Failure is great. Just got to pick yourself back up again and keep going, keep moving forward and keep moving forward. And there is no end in sight when it comes to overall well-being and feelings. But one things that's just so important is that if anyone's sitting in their head suffering, get out of your head and get in and talk to somebody, because there's so many people. There's Hector's house. There's addiction issues. There's tons of addiction places you can go. There's loads of numbers you can telephone now. Don't feel ashamed, guilty. Get your pride out of the way and go and ask for help, because as soon as you ask for help and you have that courage to do it, you're taking a step to changing your life, and your life will get better. It will just get progressively better. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easier, but it will get better than where you are stuck in your head. And you'll think to yourself, why the fuck didn't I do that before? Why did I sit and suffer for 10 years when I could have just connected with somebody and they would have expressed to me exactly what my issue was?
Yeah.
It's just
Sam, I mean, you're so on it, and you are so inspirational, and anyone looking at you would go, that guy's got it all. And you've shown your vulnerability in saying, I have struggled, and I'm a work in progress, because we are as human beings. It's okay. We have to live in this real world, which is in many ways brilliant, in that we have healthcare, we have everything else. We have all of this stuff, the computers, but we just have to recognize what is good and bad. A bit like a knife, it can be a good and a bad thing. Let's do that with everything. And also, I love your thing on recognizing our part. So being honest with yourself as well, being kind to yourself, but being honest and saying, okay, yeah, I'm a human being. So I did, yeah, okay, this is where I am. And what can I tweak? and so that we don't just go around blaming, because that doesn't really serve any of us.
Right.
But forgive ourselves, be kind to yourselves, and then go, okay, yeah, what's the truth? What can I do? And know that you're a human being and that you are okay.
Yeah, I think as well, lowering your expectations. One of the best analogies someone gave to me, Sam, is like, you said you're like a high jumper, right? And you walk up to the high jump and you set the bar really high, and then you run at it and you try and jump it, and you never jump it. He said, have you ever thought about just lowering the bar? And then when he did that to me, he said that to me, and I was like, oh my God, the expectation, when I wrote down the expectation of I had on myself of what I should be, it was insane. There was no wonder I felt like a failure, because my expectations were so high. It was ridiculous. And as soon as I started lowering the bar and I felt okay about it, it was like, oh, I'm achieving things. And then all of a sudden you get a sense of achievement. And it's like, why was I setting it so high? And sometimes it's a good thing to kind of like have these aspirational goals and stuff. But it's also so debilitating. It's like, just lower the bar, man. You know.
But it doesn't have to remain low. So it's setting a realistic goal.
Yeah.
And then you can raise the bar. So we're not saying that you can't jump that at that height, but you need to practice. You need to have your eye in. You need to get the muscles in there in the right place.
Yeah.
And then you can raise it inch by inch.
Yeah.
So you don't feel by lowering the bar that it's a negative thing. It's being realistic and understanding where you are.
Basics and foundations, isn't it? And it's
but you gave yourself permission then to actually step back and go, okay, where am I now?
Yeah, and it's powerful. That is, you know,
it's so powerful.
It's powerful because you that pressure upon your shoulders is gone. You know, you don't have to have this expectation of yourself, this demon in the corner saying, "What are you failing? You're a failure. You're a failure. You're a failure." And it's like, well, I'm not actually. I'm just learning, and I'm okay with that. So, Robert, obviously, when we very first got in contact, we talked about financial well-being. Financial well-being, but also the well-being of financial planners and the machoism, if you like, within the profession. And we talked about sort of why perhaps there isn't much about mental health within the financial planning profession. And we talked about a distinct lack of females, and females tend to be more compassionate type individuals. And in any profession where you see more females, you tend to have more sort of open conversation about things like mental health. But also the average age of an advisor is quite old. It's older, it's like 55, and it's predominantly male. Males aren't predominantly people that have talked about their own mental health, especially men from a certain generation. And it's certainly a profession where a financial planner is seen to be this kind of pillar of community and has to be strong. And you mentioned it earlier, you know, going through a period like COVID, you're there to support people when they're going through a really worrying time. So a financial advisor being vulnerable or making themselves vulnerable can often feel like the wrong thing to do. When we got together, we had a roundtable discussion, brought a few financial planners in, and we talked about that. And what was apparent was that, especially in the world of financial planning, being self-employed, being quite isolated a lot of the time, there wasn't that connection, was there? And so there are probably, and as expressed around that roundtable, lots of people sitting in their shit and not being able to express it to other financial planners who might be able to solve their issues and solve their problems. And that small sort of roundtable that we did, it was really, really positive. And we all were in agreement that this is something that we should do. And I'm thinking now, perhaps, you know, off the back of this podcast, maybe we put out an invitation to any financial planner, male or female, that would like to connect with other financial planners, just to talk about perhaps some of the struggles and the strains and things that they're going through from an honest, open, trusting place, and just see whether or not we can build something. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Robert.
Yeah, I think that would be superb, because having people from different parts of the industry, different walks of life, then you get a whole cross section of interest, but with that whole thing of saying, yeah, I want to be connected to part of something that can be positive, that can help people through issues. So, but also where people can be honest and talk about how they're feeling. I think it would be a great thing to do. I'm not aware that there's anything being done at the moment, that there's anything out there. And I do know that there is a need for people to be able to know where to go to if they need help. And some people, you know, you would think it's all out there. You think people would know, but I'm always surprised when and I wasn't actually. No, I'm living proof of the fact that I didn't know much about mind or Samaritans or anything until Hector took his life. And obviously I know all about that now. So there are people who are doing their day job, who are just getting on with their lives, who are feeling crap, who don't need to feel like that and be on their own. So certainly I think it would be great if we could organize some way of connecting with everyone, however that looked, and whatever, you know, to be able to have a community of you know, financial planning, well-being, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. I would be fully supportive and want to be involved in that.
Well, let's just take it somewhere like we did before and let's see what happens. I think that's probably, you know, when we say setting the bar, let's just set the bar nice and low in the beginning. Yeah. And just bring some people in and all sit around and have a discussion. And I think, you know, if you can create something that's like once a week, you know, and people can come in and you're all doing the same job, so you're all expressing and you're sharing the same sort of fears and worries and concerns and problems, then solutions will naturally come out, connections will be made, mentoring will happen naturally. And I think without actually doing it and applying it and putting it into place, then it will never happen. And as you said, there's nothing out there at the moment. So let's take a look, let's see what happens and sort of take it there. Robert, listen, I'm really, really glad I've spoken to you today. Love talking to you. Obviously your background, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing openly around your son's suicide as well, and Hector's house and what you're doing to help raise awareness of mental health and help signpost people and support people to hopefully not take the decision to end their life and to actually see that there is hope and there is a different way. And I think it's inspiring that you're doing that. And thank you, Robert.
Sam, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for sharing your story too, and allowing me to come on here. And it's always wonderful to see you and to hear you and to talk with you. You're an inspirational chap.
Oh, Robert, you're too kind. Thank you so much.
I mean it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, mate. All the best. Take care.
Cheers.